Give yourselves a round of applause for making it all the way to the last presentation of the day. So I'm Pat, and this is my partner Oren, and we're excited to share our Capstone project with you all today. Our project is based on electrifying America's buildings through small business, and we're excited to share some of our learnings from throughout the quarter. So first, a little background on us. Oren and I are both MBA, MS students like everyone else who presented today. Oren's background is part in politics, where he worked on a number of political campaigns, and part in tech, where he worked at Google. My background is as an operator at climate tech companies, as well as an investor in renewable energy projects. So the agenda for today is to start by framing up the problem that we're trying to address and describe some of the key technologies that will be used in solving that problem. We'll then talk a lot about what we've done over the last 6 months and some of the methods we used. And then we'll share some of our key takeaways as well as some of our conclusions and next steps. All right, so what problem are we trying to address? This is not the first time this has come up today, but we are also trying to address the problem of emissions from buildings, although we're taking a little bit of a different angle on it. If you look on the graph on the left, you'll see that building operations are responsible for 27% of global greenhouse gas emissions. If we want to meet our Paris Climate Accord goals, we need to be renovating at least 3% of buildings per year. And right now, we're renovating less than 1% of buildings per year. So we need to increase that rate of decarbonization. When you look at where emissions actually come from in buildings, you'll see that it's tied very closely to energy use. And so the graph on the right shows building energy use by source. You can see there that HVAC, or heating, ventilation, and air conditioning, are responsible for about 40% of building energy use. Now, part of that is from electricity that powers your AC unit, but another part of that is from fossil fuel combustion that's used to provide space heating. And so if we want to decarbonize our building stock and our existing buildings, we need to find a replacement for fossil fuel powered heating. How are we going to do that? We're going to use the most magical technology that exists, heat pumps. So we, like many others, believe that heat pumps are the future of electrified heating in homes, moving from fossil fuels as the fuel for heating to electricity. So how do heat pumps work? They use electricity and the refrigeration cycle to both heat and cool buildings. They're basically like an AC unit that can run in either direction. It's actually a bad name because they both heat and cool homes. So in the summer, they'll operate like an AC unit, where they'll move heat from inside to outside. And then in winter, they do the reverse, where they take heat from outside and move it inside. Now, there's many benefits to using heat pumps. They're environmentally friendly, right? So they can replace fossil fuel powered heating with an electrified form of heating. They're also very efficient. Because they don't actually generate any heat, they just move it around. They can be 200, 300, 400% efficient. They actually increase indoor air quality. So you're not actually combusting anything inside of a building. You're not creating particulates there. And they actually dehumidify the air as well. And finally, it's important to point out that heat pumps are an established technology. So there's over 200 heat pumps, roughly 200 million heat pumps worldwide. And about 90% of homes in Japan use heat pumps. But they've yet to really take off in the US. And I'll have Oren describe a little bit more about that.
Thanks, Pat. So like Pat said, it's well understood that heat pumps are the solution to decarbonizing America's building stock. But only 16% of homes in the US actually have heat pumps. So over the past 6 months, we wanted to go out and research to understand how we could accelerate heat pump adoption for homes across the US. And so to do that, we spoke with over 100 people in the HVAC and heat pump industry, including contractors, installers, investors, and other folks in the industry. And we in particular want to thank the contractors who took time out of their busy day to speak with us and help us learn. It was a fantastic opportunity. In addition, we really wanted to get off campus and out into the field. So we went to training facilities, installations, and even warehouses. And of course, we also did a lot of reading as well. And from those conversations and that research, we had 6 major takeaways. The first is that there's a massive staffing shortage in the industry. There simply are not enough technicians to install the number of heat pumps that needs to happen over the next several decades. This is well known within the industry, and there's a lot of quantitative data to back this up. Nearly everyone we spoke with mentioned this. Second, even when you do have a technician who wants to learn about heat pumps and wants to learn how to install heat pumps, it's actually a very complicated question of how do you train them properly. If just because they've installed a furnace does not mean they're going to be able to easily translate that to heat pump technology. Additionally, it's not an obvious decision for a small business that they should take a technician out of the field and have them learn for a day or two. That is money and job that the business is not receiving. Third, because there are not enough technicians who know how to install heat pumps, oftentimes the installation process will not go smoothly. So there are cost overruns or it just takes too long. Obviously, that's annoying for the homeowner. But then if that homeowner then tells a friend that the heat pump installation didn't go well, that friend is then less likely to install a heat pump as well, and that slows down growth. Fourth, thanks to the IRA, the Inflation Reduction Act, and forward-thinking states like California and New York, there's actually a lot of government incentives out there to lower the cost of heat pumps for homeowners. But each of those incentives requires a different application and a different messy process to get. For many homeowners, it's simply too complicated to figure it out. And while contractors try to help them in this process, sometimes the contractors just don't have time. So even though the money is out there, homeowners don't always receive it. Fifth is that heat pumps are more expensive than furnaces. And while this has always been the case, it's become dramatically worse over the past few years because of supply chain issues from COVID, and manufacturers have been raising prices. And then last, every market is different. This is true for HVAC as for other skilled trades. But a contractor is only going to visit a home that's within a day or a half-day drive of their office. And often there isn't enough knowledge sharing between contractors. So even, let's say there's a specific house that one contractor figured out how to install a heat pump quickly and efficiently in that type of home, that's only helpful for that contractor. And oftentimes that knowledge does not get shared with others. So zooming out, we tried to ask ourselves, if we were a contractor, what changes would we make to our business operations to try to accelerate heat pump adoption? And it came down to two big changes. First, for sales. Today, 80 to 90% of heat pumps that are installed, and HVAC installations in general, happen at an emergency fix. So imagine it's winter out, it's freezing, and your furnace breaks. You need a new furnace right away. You don't want to try some new technology called a heat pump. So instead, what has to happen is contractors have to work with homeowners in advance to create what we're calling an electrification roadmap. So a year or two in advance, they talk to the homeowner and say, oh, your furnace is going to break soon. It's at the end of its life. This is what we think we should replace it. So then when the furnace does break, they can switch it out for an heat pump quickly and efficiently. Second, for training. Today, when contractors want to hire new trainees, they go out into the field and try to hire someone. But it often takes a couple of months, and it's frustrating and time-consuming and expensive. Instead, in the future, contractors are going to need to create an in-house talent pipeline. It's going to be a little hard in the beginning because they're going to have to invest their time and energy. But in the long run, as heat pumps penetrate the market, and as it's critically important that their technicians know how to install them properly and do it well so they don't get callbacks, it's going to be an investment that will be a major growth lever for them in the future. So if you zoom out even further, we think that 10 years from now, contractors are going to look quite different than they do today. And if you imagine that, you can have a contractor who builds a long-term relationship with a homeowner. They visit the home every couple of times a year to maintain appliances and make sure they're up to date and give status updates to the homeowner. They then work with the homeowner to build an electrification roadmap to understand what appliances are going to break soon and what they're going to switch from a fossil fuel appliance to an electrified appliance when that eventually happens. And then when the appliance does break, the homeowner knows to call that contractor, and the contractor has the unit ready to slide it into the system as quickly and efficiently as possible. And all the while, the contractor will have a robust talent pipeline so that as their business grows with electrification, they can continue to supply homeowners as needed. There are over 150,000 HVAC contractors in the US, and there's even more plumbers and electricians. We think they are going to be incredibly important for the energy transition, and we've spoken with many who are excited. It's been an honor and a privilege to be able to get to know so many of these hardworking people. And we can't wait to see what they're going to do in the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'm curious on the point of the contractors also seem like they need to be experts in selling a message and a behavior change, because I could imagine a consumer being like, oh, wow, this is going to cost. Is this just trying to pull the wool over my eyes and sell me something more expensive? Right? That's what I would imagine. And so wondering in that equation of how not just the training expertise to be able to install it, but also explaining some of the larger environmental reasons or costs associated with that. I'm wondering if you heard that at all or thinking about that.
I would say that most contractors we speak with don't sell the environmental kind of benefits, right? They sell some of the other things I mentioned, right? So it's very efficient, right? So you're using not only a cheaper source, typically, depending on where you're at, a cheaper source of energy and electricity instead of gas, typically. But you're also using less of it because it's highly efficient. They're selling this better indoor air quality for your kids, right? Because you're not combusting anything in the home. So in that way, they're not actually getting into the environmental impact. The cost side is a very real issue, right? I'd say that's being addressed with the Inflation Reduction Act, some of the programs out of that, as well as the rebates that are going to start hitting next year. And so that's helping to address some of those concerns. But that is a real kind of pitch, right, where you're saying it's a higher upfront cost, it saves you money maybe over the long run. And so I think that's part of that sales paradigm and building out that roadmap is educating customers along the way, building that relationship where they're trusting you is going to be really crucial.
Thank you both. Given the national shortage in HVAC contractors, what do you think are some of the solutions to bring more of a labor supply into this industry?
Yeah, I think one of the big things is just getting the news out that it's a really great career path that provides a long-term training opportunity and really good wages. And so there's been increasing investment from both the federal and the state level to try to get that message out and create some of these training programs. And then also just making sure that people understand that, and then you provide an avenue for that so that the training actually goes well and they're able to get on job sites, because it's always more exciting to be able to actually go on a job site rather than just do it in a school. So I think some combination of both sort of getting the news out and then also investing in those programs, both at the sort of state level and then also at sort of the business level via apprenticeships.
And I say there are actually some folks are approaching from the ground up. So we came across some TikTok influencers, they're HVAC techs, that like post like videos of their like jobs they installed, and they have like a lot of pride around it. And so there's like different ways to attack that. A lot of them are sponsored by some of the largest manufacturers, right? Because the manufacturers have a lot of power in the industry. You know, the contractors are very fragmented, but there are only a few manufacturers. And so they're helping to support some of that kind of bottoms-up movement to get more people interested.
So I'm also curious about the, in terms of large industry, factories, data centers, right? How heat pumps might be out there in that market, and then how often do they need to be changed up or serviced, right? So a big cost is in a lot of the air conditioning of the data centers, which is one of our largest energy use, right, in Silicon Valley, is then these HVAC systems have to be cleared out every few years, right? And so then you're bringing in a crane to change out all those systems. That's an added cost. So I'm wondering with heat pumps, how long are these pumps able to work before service, or how do they compare with current HVAC in terms of that cost? Like those other hidden costs that you're going to have to hire a crane to be able to change them out and stuff like that.
So we focus mostly on residential. So I think we have less kind of understanding of what the larger commercial looks like for heat pumps. Maybe Claire can help you out. But for residential, at least, you're seeing similar, if not longer, lifetimes than your comparable gas furnace. You're also seeing, although this is, I would say, theoretical, but you're seeing lower like renovation costs or upkeep for them. But that's, I think, still to be proven. The data set's not large enough, I don't think, for that yet. But that's going to be a huge issue and potential selling point maybe down the line. As a lower, not only fuel cost, but also a lower upkeep cost for these systems.
Awesome presentation. I have
So you mentioned that supply chain shocks from COVID have driven up the individual unit prices of heat pumps. There's kind of two related trends that I'm interested in here. One is that there is a handful of startups and sort of newfangled heat pumps that are hitting the market over the next sort of several years. And the other is as this technology scales, how do you think those two trends will impact prices of heat pump units? Do you see that stabilizing, going down, or where does that go over time?
Yeah, it's a great question. So the manufacturers have realized that there's been increasing demand, specifically in the US, because traditionally the US has not been a big heat pump market, especially for ductless heat pumps, whereas they were much more common in Europe and other parts of the world. And so they've rapidly expanded production. And I went to visit a warehouse in New Jersey, and you could just sort of see many heat pumps. It was like, I think, 20 football fields. It was kind of incredible, sitting, waiting to be shipped out. So I think the supply chain crunch is slowly being handled. And I think hopefully the cost will be driven down also for homeowners via the incentives. I think the biggest issue is if, for whatever reason, those incentives don't get passed on to homeowners, could be a problem. And yeah, to your point, there are a lot of startups who are looking into the space, who are trying to solve specific issues. They're all relatively early, so it'll be exciting to see where that plays out.